Welcome back. We're the Bourbon Junkies. He's Dan. I'm Sean. Tonight, we're gonna do a little talking head topic here. Bourbon getting too expensive.
Yeah.
Just the cat.
Cookie said yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wish Cookie was mic'd up for that. Sound like a frog. All right, before we get into today's video, huge shout out to Andrew Kelly supporting the channel.
There was, what?
Oh.
You used a small bottle.
I didn't even peripherally see it. I heard it. I sensed the force just.
So like my hand closed early
Yeah.
and like it
Interesting.
pressed it out and then I just caught her back up.
Andrew Kelly, thank you for supporting us, buddy. Helping us out. Andrew's got a shelf over there. Andrew wanted Scotch malt on his shelf. This is a 4-year Scotch Malt Whiskey Society American whiskey from
In
Tejas.
New European Oak Barrique.
Holy moly, that's unique. That's the
remember
most
liking it.
mesquite.
Yeah, you like this one a lot.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's good. Oh, Dan's sick, so I'm making him drink out of a glass.
Yeah. I got a cold.
You know what?
I'm on the way down though.
I haven't had one of these in a long
Those are
time.
so good.
Yeah.
People slept on those a little
This
bit.
is the 2020. Is it Olaroo? Nope. Tawny Port. That's what it was.
People slept on the cellar collections for a minute. I don't know if they're not all like the Mizunara we didn't love. The rest of them we liked a lot.
Ice wine cask was.
Yeah, that was that the rye one,
No, I think. Oh, maybe it was.
or
It was like one of the most.
was that the frosted bottle?
Yeah, I think
remember
it
the
was
frosted
most
bottle?
recent one, but it was ice wine.
Okay.
Port cask.
What's up, bro? You want to fight?
Yeah, you do.
He does.
He's
He
like-
wants to, he's a brawl cat.
He's
now.
like, just love me. This guy's being rude.
I've been petting for friggin' 15 minutes, literally.
I've been cleaning your throw up. Because you're a stinky little cat.
You're a little asshole.
Yeah. I'm just going to preface this that we kind of stole this from Matt. On
Okay.
his 1 ounce Wednesday, he recently just had a barrel product, and it was like a 15-year-old one,
Oh, okay.
$250.
Okay, so this is good because I didn't know that. So Sean just shot me a message and was like, "We should talk about this." I was like, "Yeah," because
I said, I think that's a
we
great
do
topic
talk
to
about it from
talk
time
about.
to time.
Yeah.
We often make like a reference to it, but we don't
Yeah.
sit down and like chat about it. There
Good-
you go.
good
Show
dog.
him your tits.
Nope.
That was to Cookie, and he's a boy. That was perfectly consensual. So here's the thing. Over
Yeah.
the past, let's say 4 years. I'm
what
going
I
to
was
use a
gonna say.
completely random
I'm good with
number.
4.
Over the past 4 years, whiskey's gotten more popular, as
Yes,
it's continued to for a lot of years.
Really blown up since about like 2007, realistically.
Sure.
It's like when people talk about like Pappy still sitting on the shelf. And then about 2010, 2011 or so, like the Pappygate stuff started happening.
Yeah.
I think it was in that time range. And then whiskey really took off as America's spirit again.
Sure.
We were over and done with vodka. We're back on the whiskey train. We're very, very excited about how bourbon is in America. And realistically, I think the last 4 or 5 years, it's just been like exponential growth.
Yeah, and COVID propelled it a little. Everybody sat at home, sat inside. Honestly, through the last recession, was that 2010, 11-ish?
Yeah.
I mean, not this one,
2008,
not the current one.
And then we had 2012.
Okay.
We graduated in both of them. Hurrah.
Yeah, fucking nailed it, pussies. So anyways, but in one of those, because a while back I was doing research on like markets that did well during recessions and then ones that did poorly. And one of the only ones that actually didn't take like a huge hit was actually whiskey. Now it was blended whiskeys in a lower priced point. It wasn't like premiums. It wasn't Blue Runs and Whistle Pigs, but it was
Yeah.
the Beams, the Jacks, the Legacies.
Yeah, it wasn't the $200
They did well.
bottle whiskey. It was more or less the $20 bottles of whiskey that
Yeah.
sold.
They did well though.
Yeah.
But what's happened since is because the market exploded during COVID, the secondary market exploded. The secondary market being like, people selling it illegally for the most part,
Yes.
but people selling it on like Facebook groups or Reddit groups or wherever you sell whiskey,
Illegally, allegedly.
Illegally?
I've heard stories.
wherever you do that at.
Dark alleys.
All of those prices, literally most of them doubled to quadrupled.
Yeah.
Elmer Teely on secondary used to be like 150. It literally hit 400. Like it just,
It's a 40. That's a 10x from retail.
President's Choice used to be $375. It's $800 to $1,000 each. Their barrel proofs for $250. They're
Stags,
$500, $600, $700.
Stags used to be like $400,
Yeah.
$500. Now they're like $1,200, $1,500. Like shit's wild.
Yeah. So what happened in the same time was store owners found out about the secondary markets. They found out about the capitalism portion of our government and our society.
It's almost like they were on their same grips.
And they thought, I could just do this in my store legally because there's no law against marking things up exponentially. We have laws here about undermarking or whatever. But so stores started to follow secondary pricing to some extent. And then here's the problem with that happens to be that there was a certain amount of consumers very willing to operate in the secondary market price points, right?
Yeah.
I want a blend, it's $150, I'll pay $150.
Yeah, you have one, I don't care. I'm gonna pay $150 because I want it. And since it's on your shelf, I'm happy to pay you for it. And then you're super happy because, hey, instead of selling it for $60, I just sold it for $150.
Yeah.
And the guy thanked me for having it.
Yeah, and instead of making 15% on that $60, which is what the retailer might have made, now they made freaking 200%. You know what I mean? Like, there are times where that's a win-win. Now, the problem is the entire market isn't comfortable paying those prices, which is why the secondary market wasn't flooded with normal consumers.
Well, I think also along the same lines as the shop owners going in and seeing secondary and seeing like, oh man, we're really undercharging. I feel like distilleries are now going, hey man, we might be undercharging.
Sure.
If you're gonna mark it up to $200, why should I not just sell it to you for $150 now?
Yeah.
You can make your 15%, still charge the same amount, and people will be like, hey, thank you for carrying this bottle or whatever, I'm happy to pay for it. Like, look at all the limiteds, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, like turkey, last one, $275.
Well, so just to give you guys a TLDR, just in case you don't know how it works, distillery makes the product, sells said product to a distributor at wholesale cost, then they're done. They're out of the equation. So any money made on this now is not given to the distillery. The distributor then sells it to a retailer at, wholesale plus, let's say 35%. Retailer then marks it up 15 to 30. They resell it again, right?
There aren't royalties down the line.
There's none.
For the distillery.
There's no feedback here.
Yeah.
Like, you ain't getting shit. So George T. Stagg went for $1,000 in a store. Literally, Buffalo Trace sold that to the distributor at probably like $75 or whatever,
it's
right?
Probably like $50.
Right. So either way you look at it, Buffalo Trace still only made, what, $50 that bottle or $60 that bottle. Yeah. They only made 60 on that bottle when the retailer actually ended up making freaking 700 or 800 on the bottle. So I know, like, a lot of people blame the distilleries. I've blamed distilleries. We've all blamed distilleries at some point in time.
I blame
But
them on
in
something.
some scenarios, it wasn't them, it was the retailers or something like that. I'm not preaching that all markups and all secondary prices, all this stuff's all wrong. It's not all wrong. But there is a point, like, I'd say more than half of the consumer market does not want to pay secondary for bottles, right?
No. The point is, like, I get charging up for limiteds. A lot of places do limiteds very well. I think Beam actually does, or Heaven Hill does one of the best with the decanter series. The old fits.
10 a year?
About 10 a year. Perfect.
Yeah.
There are other ones that it's like, I mean, you can look like the Willet that we talked about. It was like $30 a year.
Yeah.
Insane.
Sure.
And it was like an 8-year product, $240 or $250, whatever it was. Insane markups. And like, we're just getting to a point where there's so many like saturated bottles out there that I don't know where the tipping point is that people are going to stop paying so much for limited. But at some point, the market needs to come just back down a little bit.
Well, and honestly, like, to go back to your point, because I didn't want to skip over, I just want everybody to have a foundation of how this system works, because I don't think a lot of people even know that the distillery is not the one making that money.
Oh yeah,
I
they
think
get nothing.
often you would think that the distillery would get some money back. But back to your point of like the newest Wild Turkey release, some brands saw, hey, we're not getting the secondary on that bottle is $400, and we sold it at wholesale for $60. That we're losing a bunch of money. From a business perspective, good businesses would be that we need to make more money. We can for free.
Yep.
Same product, just bump the cost. The problem is sometimes when to bump a cost and to bump your bottle to secondary pricing is actually pushing, I'd say, more than 50% of the consumer market away from your product, because not everybody was willing, again, to operate in secondary pricing.
Yeah.
There are very few bottles that Sean or I will pay secondary pricing for. We just don't. We don't think there's a lot worth secondary cost.
Yeah,
there are
there's
some here and there.
Yeah,
There
there's
are.
a huge tipping point in dollar per value.
Yes.
And I've always said it's about $400.
There's diminishing returns.
There are things that I will spend $400 on and be really happy.
Yeah, like Old Forester.
I mean, yeah, 1989 Old Forester. I mean, did it happen? Yeah, it happened. But it's
Legally.
yes, that was legally from the shop.
Yes,
Let's just say it.
Yeah.
But it gets to a point where I think it's the same thing as the Fed. You jack the interest rate up, you slow down buying.
Sure.
All right, cool, man. You want to slow everyone down? Everything that was 100, now 300.
Yeah.
And you go, well, I can't buy 3 bottles
Yes.
that were all 100 before, but now I can buy one
Yeah.
at 300 and be out the exact same.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem. Only certain brands are doing
much
this.
money.
There's only certain brands kind of playing around with the pricing. Bookers, or I get like the Beam side, they started
ahead
it
of
felt
it,
like,
yeah.
because they were doing it with Bookers, they were bumping stuff. And like Buffalo
70
Trace
to 100
followed
real
a
fast.
little bit with the Weller lines. They bumped all the Weller lines up. Antique 107 was $25, secondary was 60 to 70.
And then it hit like 50.
2 years later,
60,
that
yeah.
antique's 50 or 60 retail. And then what happened was, and Buffalo Trace, mind you, to their credit, hasn't done it on most of their shit. And they
don't need
1000% could have.
don't need to.
The whole antique line could be bumped
$500
MSRP,
bottle.
and it would be fine.
Yeah.
Everybody's still paying $500 for George C. Sag, sounds good, whatever.
Yep.
But some brands like Constellation
Let's not say
would
that.
be
Let's
one.
reel it back. $250 bottle.
I'd pay $300. I'm gonna be honest.
$250.
Constellation would be a brand that I would say has done this a lot, and then Campari would be the one that
Campari.
I'd say has done it the most. So
Man.
Constellation owns High West. High West has reeled. They bought High West. High West has reeled in a bunch of their products, turned them into limiteds, then jacked the price on them. And then Barai, which mind you, here's the thing, I will
Wasn't that like
shut my.
$70?
It used to be 80.
Okay, 80.
I will shut my mouth if every year's Barai is as good as this year's. I'll pay $125. Fuck it. I don't give a shit. You make that whiskey taste like that inside of me, I'll pay you $125 every time.
I mean, there are also other brands that we've talked about recently that you take one product line, you jack the price up a little bit, and you feel that quality has dropped. So it's like
That's a lot of brands right now.
That is, I think, what we're living in.
Yeah.
Is a lot of places are charging a lot more because they're seeing so much more money being brought in just from $10 a bottle. When you have volume, it's a lot, especially for places like Buffalo Trace.
Yes.
But or Woodford, you start charging a little bit more, and then you make it a little bit younger. Not quite the same, and like that right there is
That's
what
the
I
most
think
disappointing thing.
drives people away from a
Yes.
brand.
It's disappointing.
It's where we're at
Listen,
right now,
you
and it
still have to
sucks.
work the same amount of hard that you've ever worked for your money, maybe harder. Depends what job you got, right? So you're not working, your life didn't become easier, and then you just got shittier whiskey for more money. Like, what a fucking disaster. Campari's done this with all of the turkey releases now. Campari bought turkey, Campari just bought Wilderness Trail.
Yep.
We'll see what happens with Wilderness Trail.
Can't wait.
Campari is ripping the shit out of pricing out of the turkey distillery at this point.
And
they're keeping their mainstays, their cores at the same. But the Master's Keeps are $275 now at the distillery. They were $150.
I thought they were $125.
$275.
Yeah.
$275.
No, I thought they were $125
when they
before.
started.
Yeah.
The first one may have been.
Yeah.
But then they bumped to like $150. I think Cornerstone was like $160, $170.
Yep.
And now they're $275, and it's like, is this the greatest turkey you've ever put out? Because it's one of the most expensive. And then like
haven't
the
heard
Russell
so.
single ricks, those are very expensive. Now here's those really limited Russells are very cool bottles and very sought after.
they
Do
are.
have very high secondary like pricing on them. So I do understand some bump, and I know that as a distillery, when you're not getting any of that money back, it's a real bummer that you're selling it for so cheap, and then people are willing to pay so much.
But they're also putting out, a couple thousand of them, not a couple million
True.
of those bottles.
Very
so the volume game is also a big deal. But I think just overall across the board, like $50 is almost a new 30.
Something like that.
Everything
for sure.
that was like $30 is now 50.
Yeah.
I think right now, in the next couple years, I'm gonna say it right now, I think it's gonna come down to like craft distillers.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna start filling like the niche market for people like locally.
Yeah.
Us, New Holland. Great value.
Honestly,
it's a product that
unique,
I love.
very good.
$50 for a small batch. I was like, all right,
And
cool.
you're supporting local. People like that too.
I'm in on that.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't carry secondary value,
Yes.
nothing like that. It's just a bottle that I really, really enjoy to have.
Yeah, it's not intended to be allocated. You
Yeah.
should just be able to replace it when it's gone.
Yeah, man, it's getting weird.
I think that you're right. I think I think what's going to happen is things are going to come down to brand loyalty. And I think things are going to come down to, were you one of the people at the given time in which shit was jacked to the moon and back? Because the other side of this is barrels are the most expensive they've ever been. So barrels, like from a buying or making whiskey, things are the most expensive they've ever been in buying and making whiskey. I had a meeting with...
Also, I'm going to say right now, profit margins are also the highest they've ever been on, I think, bottling and selling whiskey.
I mean, not for us.
Not for us. No.
Because we're not choosing a higher market or price.
But I'm saying for those brands that are making it their own, like the big distilleries that are doing from start to finish.
Sure.
Their profit margins are way higher than they've ever been, even with a higher production cost.
So...
Because they're charging so much more for whiskey.
But I'm talking more along the lines of the people who aren't, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I just, across the board, a flat value is a distillery in Michigan that's making their own product, and now we know how much it costs for them to make a barrel of whiskey. It's not as cheap as you used to be able to buy a barrel of whiskey for less than they can make it for right now, and they're not charging the shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with our buddy about our pricing at one point, and he was like, I hope you guys can keep it where it's at. We sold the bourbon for $60. It was 5-year-old whiskey. And we, now mind you, we're contract distilling, sourcing, and those types of things. So the sourcing market is like the craziest it's ever been, for sure.
West.
But, which has driven the price of source NDP's brands or sourcing brands up a lot. Mm-hmm. But there are brands like Penelope who took the hit on the chin.
Yeah.
Instead of passing to consumers, kept their bottles at a stable price point, in the $60 to $70, maybe $80 price range for most of their products, even though their profit margins went down.
Yeah.
I think what happens when the tilt hits, or the top of the mountain, we find it, wherever that peak is at, which I do think we're either there or it's happening soon.
We've got to be close, right?
Secondary prices are coming down, which makes me think that we're around a peak.
We can't get much higher on either LEs, secondary, stuff like that. Like, there are only so many bottles and so many people that will spend, that amount of money for. We're getting to the end of it.
Yeah. But those brands, I think, are going to be loved more when it comes back. Yeah. I can tell you what's really difficult is to lower your prices. What's really hard, it's not hard to make prices go up when shit hits the fan. Now, to bring them back down is going to be really difficult, because you've already made this commitment to X dollar bottle. There are some brands who put out really great whiskey consistently at certain price points. I think that Foregate puts out great whiskey at a higher price point. I think Barrel King puts out great whiskey at higher price points.
Premium brands exist in the market
and do a good job.
And do a very good job.
Some of them.
Yes. That exists. That'll always exist. Yes. It's very hard to have a volume product, like you're saying. Booker's being like, you know what? We're rolling it back. Booker's is now $90 again. And you're being like, wait, why? And you're like, well, we're not selling as much.
Yeah, and that's the point. That's the reason. I think that's where it's going to come down to brand loyalty. It's going to come down to enjoying the people that are running it, if you know them, things like that. But whiskey is the most expensive it's ever been. It just is.
Oh, God, yeah.
And it's the hardest to get that it's ever been. Barrels, there's a shortage that is driving prices. Like, there's just a lot of factors, but it's very interesting. I think it'll be interesting to watch it teeter, and then just slowly. Elmer's back down to like $250 on secondary from $400. Oh. So it's come down pretty
Feels like a deal, doesn't it?
Honestly, now, Man,
can you smell anything yet?
I don't know.
That popcorn note?
Smells like honey.
Wow.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot that was Angels.
Do you have anything else?
No, shit's expensive.
I think we're just at a real tipping point right now, and because it's kind of what it boils down to. And
listen, let it be known, full transparency, we made money on a barrel of whiskey, selling it for $60 on our first release ever.
Yeah.
So
it can be done.
Mind you, that was our price. That was the price of our contract distillation agreement. The barrel was. So it was a lower price instead of like a really high source barrel. Yep. High aged source barrel would be more expensive. It's doable to make money. Now your profit margins and what you need to do with that money is obviously what's going to drive your price. But I love Blue Run. I love premium brands. I do.
Yeah, you do.
I love Blue Run. I love Foregate. I love Barrel King. I love these brands. They're a little bit higher price points. I also think there's brands that have higher price points that are doing a shitty job.
But I was just going to say, you're talking about the ones that we like.
That I like, yeah. I think they're doing a good job. Mm-hmm. I think that if you're doing cool and interesting stuff, you can demand that price point. Now,
smaller batching, cool, whatever.
Finishing projects or different philosophies to blending or things like that. The cooperage stuff, the used cooperage stuff from Barrel King, and then the like wild cooperage projects from Foregate, I think are so different in the market right now that I think that them, like their higher price points fit. I think they're perfect. But I don't know. That's all I got.
That's what we got.
Yeah. Everybody, every comment in this video, Dan likes Blue Run and you're complaining about pricing. I literally hear it in my ears. I almost
Do
have
they
my
sound
eyes.
like that too?
Yeah. Well, no, just basement Cheeto, the whole thing.
Oh my gosh. I'll say it right now. You're a hypocrite.